Hello, I'm back. Today's video is we are going into prophecy. So I have to do a precursor. I told you the last time about a war happening, and now we have war in the Ukraine. Now I wasn't talking about that one. And I honestly told you at the time I didn't know what was going to happen across the world, but here is a hint at something that might kick this off. Seal number 2. So I want to work up to prophecy of the beast and all of that. Now, seal number 1 is that beast going out to conquer. He's the conqueror. So I'm kind of behind, right? Or I'm ahead, I should say, of what I should be. I'm behind in reporting what I should be reporting, because I should have been reporting on seal number 1. But I thought I would include seal number 1 with the rest of the prophecy, and then you would understand that seal number 2, before this beast reveals himself and all these other things occur, seal number 2 is very important. Jesus talks about seal number 2. He talks about how people slaughtering each other. Okay, so that's really peace is being taken from the earth. Okay, so in our neck of the woods, what is going to take peace away from this side? I told you it was going to be a civil war. That's not hard for people to see. I even discussed this with, I had an Uber driver here recently, and we discussed it, and she's an atheist. And I said, well, I'm just going to throw this out here, and then we're going to end it on that note. And I said, there's going to be a civil war. She said, yeah, a lot of people are talking about that. And I said, yeah, I can believe that would be the easiest thing for people to see, is what was going to happen in this country. We see it coming, So we understand that. We just don't understand that it is part of that seal, because it's only a piece of the puzzle. Okay, but I wanted you to understand what's going on in this country. Now, I want to tell you something else. There are a lot of prophets out there who want you to be vigilantes and pick up guns and go and fight your government and fight people. I don't want you to do that. Okay, I'm not asking you to fight anybody. I'm not asking you to stop anything. What I want you to do is just listen and be informed, so you don't get involved in their fight. Okay, and you find God. And and God will help you find a place of safety. I don't know where that place of safety will be for you, if it will. If is His will for your life to be in a place of safety, that's up to Him, right? So we put ourselves in God's hands. Okay, so to start off this, we have to understand who is doing all of this stuff. They're called WASPs. WASPs mean white or wealthy, if you don't want to be redundant, Anglo-Saxon Protestant, okay? And there's a great book, and I didn't bring it over here, so hold on a second. It's called by the same name, and it came out like last year, I believe. Hold on. It is called Wasps, okay? And it's by Michael Knox Barron. Okay, so he goes through the whole family trees and histories, and these people go all the way back to the formation of our Constitution, and that is so important to my message right now. Okay, so that is very important, because we're going to talk about what these people believed in. And I want to ask you a question: if you created a religion, okay, and then there was some major event like a civil war that totally knocked your religion out of the way, so you couldn't keep it, okay, fully, because slavery is a religion. It's based on the Curse of Canaan. It's a Judeo-Christian religion. Remember, these guys are Protestants. They protest the Catholic Church. Catholic Church was not against certain things, but they certainly were not for certain things either. So we'll go through that in a minute, if it's necessary. But I'm trying to give you just the rundown on who is doing all these things and why, and where we're going with this, okay? You got to know where you started to know where you end up. I had a great chemistry teacher who told me that, okay? So he said, so when he's teaching and I would go ask him a question. He said, well, Deborah, you need to know where you started so you know where you're going to end up. So that's what you need to start with. Know that when you go and take the test. Know where it begins. Because that is, because everything else is in order, okay? And so that really helped me greatly. And it helped me with this concept as well. Because where we started is where these people want to stand up. And I do not want you to stop them because it is part of prophecy. And I'm not saying that they're fulfilling any sort of prophecy necessarily, any specific prophecy. It's not specifically about them, but let's just say it's just something that's going to happen, okay? And whether they fully get through their agenda or not, well, that's the big question, okay? And we don't know that. We don't know what is going to happen. Okay, but if you stick with God, you'll be safe. You won't have to worry about, the question of whether or not you're safe. Excuse me. I'm trying to get through all of this, and I'm sort of prepared because I had notes, but just realize that these WASPs, they have a history all the way back to the formation of the old Constitution, of the very first Constitution. When I say old Constitution, it's because a lot of them created something else. So when they started, do you think all of them believed in slavery? No, they didn't. And in fact, I've got the cornerstone speech to back me up. And I'm going to read some stuff from this cornerstone speech, okay? So it was slow in development with them, but there was only a few people who believed in it, but they were WASPs. They were these people, okay? And then all of a sudden they spread out all over the country. And why wouldn't they go back, or not back, but go to New York? That it's near Washington. This is, I'm not saying they're not all over the country. I'm just saying, and they're just in New York, they're not, but it is close to Washington. It is close to what they want to keep an eye on. It is close to the place that they want to, they have the most control over. And manipulation is their game. So let me see if I can find the cornerstone speech, because that's going to answer a lot of questions that are coming up in here. So what is the agenda? The agenda is to destroy America as it exists by, even destroying corporations and stuff like that. I don't know. Tearing all this stuff down and rebuilding a system that they like. Okay? So that's the agenda. But who wants to end America? WASPs, yes, but liberals as well. So they use this liberal group, their opposition group, okay, to promote all of their agenda. Yes, and you say, well, wait a minute, if they're pro-slavery and all this stuff, then how can they support Black Lives Matter and all that stuff? Well, I'm going to explain all that too. That's a very interesting part of this game, is that you'll see a lot of reverse psychology here, going on. Interesting people. Okay, so, but, okay, so here we go. So he says that the truth about slavery, about the institution of African slavery, he says that it was slow in development. So he says this: the truth has been slow in the process of its development. Like all other truths in the various departments of science, it has been even so amongst us. So therefore, that not all of these people came in with believing in the curse of Canaan. They didn't all come in believing in the institution of African slavery. So, but it did come to that point where when they were Democrats, all Democrats, if you were a Democrat, you believed in slavery. Whether you were in the North, whether you were in the South, it didn't matter. You're a Democrat, you believed in slavery. Okay? And that was another thing that it says, I should have highlighted all of these things, but that's another point that is pointed out in the cornerstone speech. So what is the cornerstone speech? Well, we'll get to that in a minute, but this is just, I'll explain who did this speech and what he is and all of that. But first, let's talk about Democrats. Okay, so the Democratic Party, 1828. Okay, basically, a lot of people think that the Democratic Party came in earlier than that in the Jeffersonian Republican democracy, but actually, that was not the Democratic Party. Okay, the Democratic Party, the full-on Democratic Party that believed in democracy and wanted to push that agenda, was 1828. Okay, so they were around a lot longer than the guys who wanted to call themselves Republican, because the guys who called themselves Republican were like, okay, we're sick of this. We want to preserve the Republic. And they were quite adamant. So about 1853, you see the Republican Party pop up. Okay. Okay, so you see this? So we went from WASPs to Democrats. Let's talk about Confederates. Okay, well, I just want to say, not all Democrats were Confederates, because not all Democrats joined the Confederacy. Okay, some of them were a little skeptical about going to war. I mean, they had just had a Revolutionary War. I think a lot of them had remembered it and didn't want to go through another war. And I think a lot of Southerners didn't want to go through war either. They were a little reluctant to secede. So these were the people who seceded and formed the Confederacy. They were Democrats. They were border states. Not all border states joined them. It was only a handful of states. You can look that up and find out who they were. Their vice president was Alexander H. Stephens. He's the guy who wrote the Cornerstone speech. And they were called the slave-holding states of the Confederacy. Okay? And the reason it's Cornerstone speech is because the institution of African slavery is their cornerstone. Okay? Now, I have a question for you. Quiz time. Okay? If you believe, sorry, I have stuff all over me. If you believe that all white people owned slaves back then, do you think that a Democrat would lie about it? Do you think a Democrat would lie? Well, I'm getting this quote from the Cornerstone speech, okay? Actually, let's first back up for a second, because let's have that question in conjunction with this question, okay? And that is, did the state secede over states' rights only and taxation and representation? Okay, let's answer those questions, because the answer is no. South Carolina, however, in 1831 to 1833, threatened to secede over tariffs, okay? But the whole entire South did not threaten to secede over taxation and representation of, that was not the reason for going. Remember, Lincoln is a Republican. He was elected into office, and after he was elected into office, they seceded. Okay, he didn't even have a chance to move into the White House before they seceded. So it's around March, when this cornerstone, March 21st, 1861, when this cornerstone speech is given, and they're like, hey, there's been no violence up to this point. Well, you have to give time for the new president to take his seat and get his council and his, everybody together. So, he needs to get himself ready for you. He can't just go to war. Okay. So, but what they did was treason. Okay. And the United States had every right to hang them for treason. You know, stealing land and, seceding from the Union without cause. They didn't really have a good cause, because people were talking, but they weren't going to take away, they weren't saying they were going to take away their rights. Now, states' rights, yes, that was in there, but what state right? We know the federal government has a law that says states, in the Constitution, that says the government, the state, okay, talking about the federal government, can make no law regarding religion. But states can vote in laws, any law, okay? And it doesn't matter if it's religious or not. So they voted in slavery as a majority in the South, okay? And they thought that this was going to be stripped from them just because the Republican platform was to do away with slavery, but they were paranoid to the point where they insulated themselves from ideas. They didn't allow other people to come in and talk about it. No anti-slavery stuff. They even protested this in the Jacksonian era under Andrew Jackson, trying to get themselves away from any what they called incendiary platforms in the mail for anti-slavery. And they were coming from the North into the South, and they went and petitioned the government to try to ban these things. And the government was like, well, we understand, we agree, it's your religion and it's your religious rights, but we can't do it because we have to stay neutral. And there were mobs on some of the, I believe it was, I don't know if it was in Georgia or Alabama. One of those states had a mob go up, because the postmaster would not even go out and deliver that mail. They kept it right inside the post office. So they went in there and destroyed the post office over this. I guess they assumed that they were going to deliver it, but he thought it was undeliverable, and the government didn't punish the postmaster because, well, they said it was okay for him not to do that. It was, it was inflammatory or whatever. So they said no. So the question is, did they secede over taxation and representation, or over slavery? And it says, but not to be tedious in enumerating the numerous changes for the better, allow me to allude to one other, though last not least. The new Constitution has put at rest forever all the agitating questions relating to our peculiar institution, African slavery, as it exists amongst us, the proper status of the Negro in our form of civilization. This was the immediate cause of the late rupture and present revolution. Jefferson, in his forecast, had anticipated this as a rock upon which the old Union would split. He was right. What was conjecture with him is now a realized fact. Okay, so what does that say? That says they seceded over the institution of African slavery and nothing else. When you have a religious belief that you feel is being attacked, okay, well, I don't know about you, but you is kind of vernacular here. I assume they felt attacked, and so they said, fine, we will just leave your union. And yeah, that's what happened. So did every white person own a slave? Did everybody have slaves? at the formation of the old Constitution. Okay, there was slavery here, and it existed under the colonized areas. In the colonized areas, it started in Virginia, okay, in 1619, and there was a point when we took over in the revolution that we wanted to end slavery, okay, that we didn't want it. So the cornerstone speech is good for this too, okay? So it says, the prevailing ideas entertained by most of the leading statesmen at the time of the foundation of the formation of the old Constitution were that the enslavement of the African was in violation of the laws of nature, that it was wrong in principle, socially, morally, and politically. It was an evil they knew not well how to deal with. But the general opinion of the men of that day was that somehow or other in the order of providence, the institution would be evanescent and pass away. It was a prevailing idea at that time. So it basically, he says that it rested upon the assumption of the equality of races, which is exactly what they put, right? All men are created equal, okay? And so what do you know about when people are together and the majority of the people agree with something and you have a very small group that doesn't? As you see, the prevailing idea, okay, this idea was not something that at the formation of the Constitution that was accepted. Okay. Now, why am I going through all this? Because I need you to understand about lying and telling the truth. Okay? I need you to understand that there are even two sides that may lie also and not know the truth, but believe that they're telling the truth, okay? And I'm going to open up some of those lies, even one on the right that I caught. And when I catch more, I'll post it on my Facebook or something. But okay, so what are some of the other lies? The United States is a democracy. Now here I have a copy of the U.S. Constitution, okay? And this is going to be Article 4, Section 4. Right down here, very last piece, okay? I'm going to read from that. Okay, so we are not a democracy. You can't say it's because it says we the people, because that is also used. A democracy uses that, but so does a republic. And this is one proof. I shouldn't have to give you more than one proof. But here it is. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government. Okay, so that tells us that we are living in a republic, not a democracy. It's a lie. And what is the Pledge of Allegiance? When I was a schoolgirl, I used to go to school, and every morning we would recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, I found out that in 1954, they added the words under God. So it would be one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, without under God. And the reason they added it was because they were fighting the Russians because politically, okay, and saying, well, because you guys are failing because you don't have a God, because they're atheists, okay, and we are prevailing because we do have a God, okay, because we do have God on our side. And it really wasn't about them having a God or not. It was their system of things. It was communism, okay, that was giving them a problem. It was their form of government. So when it says to the republic, when you have something called a loyal league, which means you're loyal to the republic, or the Grand Army of the Republic, which is standing for the republic, you have Democrats who want a democracy. But they lie to you and they tell you you already have a democracy. Why? Because they want to put words in your head. Okay? They want to fill your mind with lies right now that they want to make into truth. So, it's magic. What's the next thing I want to talk about here? So, let's talk about white privilege. We also have that in the Cornerstone speech, but I can just memorize it. No matter how high or low, rich or poor, if you're white, you're not a slave. But if you're black, you are a slave. So, since we have a lot of free people in this country already, what do you got to do to reinstitute slavery? We can't do that under our current Constitution. We can't do that under current law. And we can't do that under standard operation of America. Because it was ended with war. And it will be reinstituted with war. When somebody says that they want to tear down America, they don't realize that they are advocating to reinstitute slavery. We have come full circle. What about insurrection? Insurrection has been brought up lately and labeled onto the Republicans just as it was labeled onto the Democratic Party. But let's talk about the Ku Klux Klan for a second. Now, the Ku Klux Klan was created by Democrats, but was not created by the Democrat Party. Okay? It later served the Democratic Party politically with terrorist activity and insurrection. And do you know they had standing armies in the South? Just as we put standing armies where? In the North? At the White House? It's all symbolic. People are playing with your mind. A lot of people say that Black people are being genocided, or there is a group out there that wants to genocide Black people. This is not true. This is not true. Okay. If there's going to be a war to reinstitute slavery, the institution of African slavery, why would you genocide what you need to complete that? That's why Black Lives Matter. They matter to the institution. A lot of people, even Republicans, say that abortion is to genocide. and black on black crime is to genocide black people. And black people believe that cops killing black people is to genocide them. And then they talk about riots in the past. They call them race massacres. Nobody massacred a race. Nobody massacred a whole race. Do you know how ridiculous that sounds? It didn't happen. It was one riot, and there were many worse than that one. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I know that it was a bad riot, but I know there were worse ones in history, reported in history. So that's another lie they tell you. They say they aren't reported in your history book. Yes, it is. There's many students today who recall reading about the 1921 race massacre or race riots. They don't want to call it a riot. They want to call it a massacre because they're trying to make you think that these people are being genocided. They're not. You know, Margaret Sanger met with the women of the Klan, and she was against abortion as a way to genocide because she said it doesn't work. She wanted to sterilize. They did not. I think they just wanted to keep the population down. There's your population control of black people. No one else. So they make the idea of abortion popular. And notice how they don't need abortion clinics anymore. All of a sudden, they're gone. Planned Parenthood used to be right over here in this neighborhood. It's not anymore. Don't know what took over that building, if anything. But it's still sitting there. Empty, I think. And then you've got Abby, I can't remember her last name. She's out there advocating against abortion. And I am not for abortion. But what I understand is that Republicans were the ones who instituted abortion and Democrats were against it at one point. In fact, Reagan, when he was a Democrat, was against abortion. It was and Catholic priests were counselors to women for abortion. Strange how things flip-flop, huh? Unlike parties, unlike people in parties, which Southern strategy is a lie. And I know you can look it up. I have all 21 senators who never switched parties except for one. So out of 21, only one switched parties. I mean, is that hard to do? Is that hard to look up and say, you know, I can look up somebody's record and find out if they really switched parties or not? All Southern Dixiecrats. So, who wants to start a war again? Well, I have this screenshot. Well, let me ask you a question first. Okay, like I said, there's a consensus. I don't know if I said this or not, but there was a consensus that the idea of people supporting slavery and different things like that that those ideals were dying out, that they didn't exist anymore, or they were on their way to extinction. There was this consensus. I think I read it from Booker T. Washington and also from George W. Williams' book. He had a it's called The School History of the Negro Race in America from 1619 to 1880. And he was a black lawyer, first black legislature in Ohio. Did I say that right? In the Ohio legislature. There we go. Boy, my little brain is all backwards. That's what happens when you read this stuff and you're trying to decipher it and turn it around, and then your thoughts get turned around. So so he was one of the first members of the Ohio legislature. He was also part of the Grand Army of the Republic. I think he was I can't remember exactly. I have a piece of paper that tells everything about him. I could pull up his book. We could look at it that way, because it tells us in the very beginning. See if I can go faster this way. Oops, excuse me. I don't know. Excuse me. Goodness gracious. I'm being attacked by my food. This is a call to change how one eats. Or I'm just talking a lot and I'm gulping in a lot of air. Sometimes that happens too. Anyway, whichever the case, I don't mean to be rude. I apologize for that. Okay. I'm looking for the page that talks. Okay. So here it is. He is the first colored member of the Ohio legislature and the late judge advocate of the Grand Army of the Republic of Ohio. Okay, he said etc. I don't know what that means, but I guess you can look up George W. Williams and find out. But this is what he says in his book. Okay, and he says, hold on, I'll find it. Oh, okay. So I was on that page. Let me see if that's where it was. Anyway, I have a quote from him. Okay, so maybe it's up here. Okay. He says it's highly gratifying to know that they no longer find an audience or readers, not even in the South. So he's talking about the Adamic race, still croaking, Ariel, and the author of Adamic race. So Helper, he's talking about the guy, that author, still croaking about the inferiority of the Negro. So all this talk of inferiority of Black people, who started that again? Okay, he said it was dying out. And I think it's interesting that he says that the black people's enemies were fading. That's what he thought back then. So somebody brought this back. Okay, it's the Democratic Party. They brought it back. When we look at other evidence as well. So I'm going to try to wrap this up here. Because basically I've given you everything, but here's the end all, and here's the ending of that agenda. I have this, let me see if I can find, this screenshot. Okay, I found it. It's easier for me to read from here. But, I have to say this. I have to give a little history of the screenshot. The people on this page are RJ 2010. If you look up RJ 2010, you'll find an empty page. It's no longer being used, but it did have a discussion page, and I took a screenshot from that page. And he's having a conversation with a guy called Nope Wait, which I can't find at all. So that as far as that YouTube channel, it's gone. I can't find it anywhere. Since there's no longer a link, I can't click on it either. So, because none of that exists. He doesn't even have videos anymore. So he might have went to a different channel. I don't know. Then there's this guy on there called Uncooked Vanilla. Now I looked him up and he still exists. Now he hasn't done anything in a while, but he still exists. So I know that's how I can prove that I didn't make this. I didn't Photoshop it. This is all authentic, okay? Now, I think the mistake that RJ 2010 made, or 2010, sorry, made against Nope Wait is he assumed that he was a redneck, a right-winger of some sort because of his racial epithets, okay? Because he was very, kind of a slapping in the face type of person, okay? So he's very short and to the point, but there are several points in here that I want to make after I read it. Now, the comment that he's responding to, Nope Wait is responding to, is that RJ 2010 said this: diversity is the future of America, whether these extreme neo-Nazi redneck wingnuts like it or not. Okay, so he's assuming that this guy is a right-winger. He's not. And he reveals himself in his own words without saying something, without coming out point blank and saying it. But in his words, he reveals himself and what side he's on. Okay? So it says, another Negroid whom hates whites yet loves those white women. Diversity is a weapon that will destroy the United States, and I can't wait. Once the United States falls, we can finally start over, and you Negroids will be extremely effed. Okay? Enjoy it while it lasts, Negroid. Okay, so, first of all, he uses the word Negroid. Okay? It's supposed to be abusive, okay, to a black person. He slaps the guy in the face and says, oh, you just like sleeping with white women. You don't really like white people at all. He says that diversity is a weapon that will destroy the United States. Notice how he uses the proper noun, United States. This is interesting to me. He doesn't say U.S. He doesn't say America. Okay, that would be a right-wing term, okay? He says United States like he's very educated. And he can't wait. He says, once the United States falls, we, who is we, can finally start over. Okay, so he wants the United States to be destroyed. He wants it to fall. The only people I know that want this place to fall are liberals. They're under the Democratic wing, which they're created by Democrats, so it's their idea. This has to be someone either very close to the elite or in the elite. Because why would Black people be effed or screwed over this if they're not reinstituting slavery? He's exposing the whole thing and himself. I'm going to end it on this note. We're going to have a war. We're going to tear down this country and we're going to reinstitute slavery. That is going to make us vulnerable. One of the things that will make us vulnerable to the beast, but the very thing that'll make every country vulnerable to the beast is when they entertain the whore. And I'm going to reveal who that is in my next prophecy video. I don't know, but no, not my next prophecy video. It'll be, let's say, the big prophecy. Okay, when I get to that, there's going to be 2 or 3 more videos in between this. I'm not sure. Maybe 2. And then the big one, the finale. Okay. And when that comes, I will reveal to you who the beast is. I will reveal to you who the whore is. And don't expect any typical answers. My next video will be about what prophecy is not. And I think I'm going to include a video of why I am a prophet in there. I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you, well, what was evident to me, okay? May not be evident to you, but I'm going to give you what was evident to me. You know, evidence is usually personal for a person, so it's very hard to get other people to believe you, but that's up to you whether you believe me or not. I'm just going to give it to you. I'm just the messenger. And that's, you know, that's all I do is I deliver the messages. I'm not your judge. I'm not your jury. Whether you believe or not is up to you. What you do with the message is up to you. But I'm just the messenger. So with that, I'm going to end this video, and I will see you in the next one.